Happy 2022 to all of you listening, and welcome to Battleline Podcast, Best of Badass Female Guests, Part 2, featuring Elana Duffy, Pat Smith, Jade Struck, Cheryl Doltz, and Hollie McKay. This is Part 2 in our two-part series, maybe more to come, of Best of Badass Female Guests, because one just wasn't enough. We've had some awesome females on the show. And hopefully this is a really cool way for you guys to start the new year. I think it's going to be a great year. And when I say that, people will be worried about all the stuff going on. But when I say a great year, the stuff that's within our control, not the stuff outside of your control. We can't really change what's going on in the news, what's going on in the country, what's going on in the world. But you, of course, do have the power to change yourself every day and to be your best self every day. And I think that's the message that we really do try to send with this podcast each and every week. Before I get into everything, I wanted to mention some really big news. Two really important deaths. I'd say unfortunate deaths, but unfortunate sometimes sounds like it was before, way before their time or something. And these guys were, they could have lived a little bit longer, but these were not, lives cut short or anything, but two true American heroes we wanted to celebrate. First and foremost, I should say, a guy that I had the pleasure of interviewing and also meeting a couple of times when I worked at my former company at a book signing event we did, and also on the podcast. That's none other than the founder of SEAL Team 6, Dick Marcinko, Richard Dick Marcinko. You guys know him, the rogue warrior and author. One of the first authors, I would say, in the special operations military community, who was doing it way before a lot of these guys that we have on the show. He was the pioneer in that field, and he is a guy who probably inspired countless other men and women to join the military and other men to join special operations military forces, whether it was becoming a Navy SEAL like him or a Green Beret or an Army Ranger. And as many of you know, I mean, you don't need me to tell you the backstory, but starting SEAL Team 6, there were not 6 SEAL teams at the time. That was creative on his part of saying, making things look more exquisite than they were, because there were only, I don't even remember exactly, I think there were only like 3 SEAL teams at the time, but there were not 6. But now we know that there's many more than that, and the SEAL teams have expanded much more. And he's a guy who's really celebrated by everyone. I know there's sometimes that interbranch rivalry, and sometimes legitimate, and sometimes it's more than just rivalry. But I feel like whether it's special forces guys that I know, or Rangers, or MARSOC, most people had only great things to say about the legend Dick Marcinko. So rest in peace to Dick Marcinko. I see that his son is on Twitter, and I reached out to him. It may be too soon, and I did say that, but at some point we'd love to have him on and have him share stories of his dad, a legend in the community. And the other person that I have to mention is Gary Bykirk, a Medal of Honor recipient and also a Green Beret. I'll read a little bit. This is from Democrat and Chronicle, which is a local paper in the New York region that he's from. Gary Bykirk, the U.S. Army medic whose heroism one April morning in Vietnam made him one of Rochester's greatest military heroes of the 20th century, died December 26th at the age of 74. The cause was cancer. Sergeant Bykirk in April 1970 was 22 years old and serving as chief medical officer for a special forces team and more than 2,000 villagers in Kon Tum province in South Vietnam. At 3 a.m. April 1st, North Vietnamese forces launched a major attack against Camp Doc Siang, spraying rockets and gunfire across the fortified compound. Sergeant Bykirk and his 15-year-old bodyguard, a Vietnamese boy named Dao, dashed repeatedly into the line of fire to help those who were wounded despite their own wounds, which were significant. Sergeant Bykirk was hit twice, the second time a devastating blow that left shrapnel in his spine, and he said, "I remember feeling like I'd gotten kicked by a horse." Dow carried him to the medical tent for aid, and then the two returned to the field. Dow was killed protecting Sergeant Bykirk from a rocket attack. Sergeant Bykirk was struck again, this time a gunshot to the back. Finally, he was evacuated by helicopter, and he quotes, Not many people know what it's like to be under fire and then hear someone yell out, "Medic," except those who are medics. And they don't know what takes place inside of you that causes you to get up and go when everyone else is hiding. Sergeant Bykirk received the Congressional Medal of Honor in a ceremony at the White House October 15th, 1973. By then, he'd been out of the service for 2 years and learned to walk again through extensive rehabilitation. And there's more to read on here, but I think that really sums it up. And rest in peace to both of those gentlemen, of course, Dick Marcinko and Sergeant Gary Bykirk. I always feel like it's important that we mention that on this show because there are those personalities in the special operations military community who everybody knows. And actually, Dick Marcinko is one of those. But these guys like Sergeant Gary Bykirk, I feel like just from reading, he was a legend in his own community in New York. But it's not a name all of us have heard. So when these guys pass, I want all of us to know these names and to know their stories. There's no reason that we shouldn't know their names and their stories. I've said it before on past shows and without going into, people, but sometimes we celebrate people I wish we wouldn't in this country. And like, these are the type of people we should be celebrating. So that's why it's really important to me and to Chris and the show at large to get the word out about not just the deaths of these guys, but their heroism, what they did. All right. Well, with that, before we get into these excerpts themselves from previous episodes with some of our greatest guests that we've had on the podcast, I do want to talk about Ned. Ned is helping so many people, guys actually in the military community who do have joint issues and trouble with recuperating from certain things are seeing tremendous results. The way that I really put it is that one of the most fundamental things in your life is recovery in terms of, we need to get exercise. You need to be in motion. You need to be getting out there. But then if you're looking to grow muscle, if you're looking to get better, like Chad, who we had on the podcast, Chad Solomon, who's an Ironman, like get better on those times, you have to be getting a good night's sleep. And CBD really, really helps you with that. So it's fundamental. If you're not getting a good night's sleep, that's crucial. Think about it. You're really not growing muscle while you're in the gym. You're tearing down that muscle, or while you're out there running like Chad or swimming, you're growing muscle as you sleep. So if you're not getting a good night's sleep, you're not going to get great results. And there's so many other benefits to CBD as well in terms of helping guys with anxiety, post-traumatic stress. And then there's even the bigger benefits that we're hearing about, and those studies are coming about with things like Alzheimer's. And that's why it's great that Ned works with a team of respected doctors that you could check out, doctors like Caroline Leaf, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and Dr. Will Cole, because it's a newer product. It's a few years deep, but the thing is, we're learning more and more with more studies each year. And that's why Ned does full transparency and shares third-party lab reports, who farms their products and all of that, their extraction process, as we're learning more and more about CBD's benefits. And some of that is even from guys that write into us at battlelinepodcast@gmail.com, like that Marine who wrote to us and had extensive history of injuries, and Ned really helped him out. So I really urge you guys to check it out. We're getting so many people who have been subscribers now of Ned or checking out Ned, and it's a big part of their regimen now is taking that full spectrum hemp. And they always hook it up for us, so they have all different types of deals when you go to helloned.com/Battleline. That's HELLONED.com/Battleline to receive a discount off your order. Thank you, Ned, for sponsoring the show and offering our listeners a natural remedy for some of life's most common health issues. Also, this may be the Best of Badass Female episode, but we're talking about balls here. That's right. Why am I talking about balls? Well, for one, our audience is crazy. When I go on like Spotify and I see the demographics, we're like a 95 or something % male audience. It's just the way it is. I know there's some loyal female listeners out there, but we are just predominantly a male audience. I mean, it just kind of happens when you have a show about guys in the special operations military community. That's kind of our target demo. So it makes sense that we've hooked up with the great folks over at Manscaped. Proper grooming requires precision engineered tools. Not only do a man's sensitive areas require it, but hygiene demands it. Manscaped is the global leader in men's below-the-waist grooming. The skin-safe technology are set back from the edge 3 millimeters and precision engineered for maximum confidence while trimming below the waist. Trimming in the shower is also easy and creates less mess. Comfortably operate the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer in wet or dry conditions. That's right, the Lawnmower 4.0. That's really new for them because up until recently they were promoting out there the Lawnmower 3.0, and they've made some great advancements on that. So visit battlelinepodcast.com/manscaped to get a free pair of boxers, a toiletry bag, and free shipping with your purchase of the Performance Package 4.0. There's so many podcasts I listen to now that are sponsored by Manscaped, and everybody speaks so highly of them, and I do as well. So if you've yet to, use a promo code for any of those podcasts that you listen to, this is your chance to get a great discount from us with them. So go there now, battlelinepodcast.com/manscaped. You are not going to regret it. And the woman in your life or the man in your life, whichever way you go, we do not discriminate here. They will greatly appreciate it. So battlelinepodcast.com/manscaped. Let's go.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Do you not get fired the fuck up every time you hear that intro? Because I do. Damn, that is a good intro. And I say that because I certainly didn't create it. I mean, I put the audio together with it of Alex Jones. Ian and I have been dating for a long time, like that part. But in terms of the actual music, that is none other than our friend Jimmy Allen, who was on one of the early episodes, which you could look back in the archive on. And for those who don't know, Jimmy is the primary songwriter and guitarist for Against All Will, and of course Puddle of Mud. Most of those great Puddle of Mud hits were written or co-written by Jimmy Allen. He's the man. So I always have to shout that out every now and again when I can. And with that, we're going to get right into our first excerpt. This is from episode 105 with Sergeant First Class Elana Duffy, telling you the entire story of her TBI and amputation of her leg, which she tells with a smile on her face and in classic military humor, I guess, attitude. Because for most people, this is obviously traumatic, but when you're around as many military people as I have been blessed to be around, you realize that they could kind of laugh about anything, even something as traumatizing as this. So let's get right into it. This was a great episode. Loved having Elana in studio. From episode 105, once again, Sergeant First Class Elana Duffy.
I was helping out one of our other teams, which was trying to figure out why the oil fields kept getting attacked. Like, here's a clue, guys. It's probably the insurgency, but I don't know. We'll go ask around. And so we went to we were out at one of the oil fields, and then as we were coming back to actually get the helicopter back down to Balad, there was slow traffic on that, and there's one main road that really goes from goes Baghdad all the way up through the middle and then up to like Mosul and that area. So we were on that road, and there was one of those Toyota sedans weaving in and out of traffic. We thought it was suspicious. They had been the guys our convoy. I was in the lead truck in the convoy. They were blowing the whistle, fired the warning shots, like all the, trying to get people to move out of the way, because we were actually behind a truck full of like workers leaving the day. So there was probably like 8 people in the bed of this truck, and then that car weaving in and out, and we couldn't see around anybody. And because the convoys all move, like 40, 50 miles an hour, however much the add-on armor of these, because we were not in the days of the MRAP or even like factory mounted armor. It was like, what can you weld on? And like we were getting like commercial rhino liner and trying to spray it on the floors so that in case you got blown up, maybe it would get caught in something. Yeah. And then just bad luck. The car weaves in. It was not a vehicle. It was not a VBID like we thought it was, but car weaves in. Truck of workers swerves, and we were just close, and there was no way to stop that our truck with all that armor on it. So we slam into this jingle truck of workers. They hit the sedan. The sedan actually hits a front loader, which had been the cause of the backup, a construction vehicle this poor guy was just trying to take home. 3 Iraqis ended up killed. I get bounced around the back because at this point I'm probably like 107 pounds because it's hot summer, hot girl summer in Iraq. And every time I would go out, I'm like I'm like a $107 and wearing like 70 pounds of gear. So no matter what happens, like I am exactly like the truck. I've got all this add-on crap and I just get momentum and keep going. So I get bounced around in the truck and my boot gets caught on the metal in the back of the passenger seat and just twist my ankle around. And of course, the closest base that we got, I was like, man, my ankle kind of hurts. But there's also dead people around, so we should probably do something about this. And so as we're loading back up, I was like, man, this really hurts. That's weird. And so when we get,
does it hurt, or is it to the point where it's not unusable? That came later.
It was not unusable. Also my boots were pretty tight. So like, when we get to, it is amazing what you can do with really tight boots, by the way, like just super tight, because we get to the closest, American outpost, and it was small. They didn't have like imaging. They didn't have a MRI. They didn't even have an X-ray. And so the guy just kind of looks at it, and because my boot had been so damn tight, like nothing was swollen. And he was like, it's already starting to kind of bruise up, but like, it's probably sprained, whatever. Turns out
take some aspirin.
Here you go. Here's some Motrin. Take a knee, drink some water, rub some dirt on it, and we'll see you later. And I went, I get on the helicopter, I go back to Balad, and I was like, I don't know, they told me it was sprained, like, I guess I'm cool, and still going out on missions and still doing.
You got no excruciating pains, nothing at all. It's just hurt. It's just like a throb.
Yeah, it just sucked. And they were like, don't run for like a couple of weeks. And I was like, well, that's fine because like I'm going out on 17-hour missions. I don't really have a lot of time to run. And then of course, later, my unit was like, "Oh, before we all go home, let's do a PT test." Because that makes so much sense. That is 18th Airborne Corps right there. That is Fort Bragg mentality of like, oh, let's do a PT test while we're still in country. Like, this would be great. Then we don't have to do it when we get home, and it's reasonable. And you know, maybe you won't get rocketed in the middle of it and have to go into a bunker. I was like, we get incoming like several times a day. Like, if we're on this PT test, like, there is a chance that during the 15 minutes that everybody's running a circle around the block, that we might get rocketed. Who knows? What do you do then? Is this in the regulation? I don't know. So we, and that really stunk. And that's when I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is more than a sprain. Okay. So other than that, I'm still just tying my boot really tight and, you know, taking some pills and going out on 17-hour missions. And, you know, I just have the giant Samoans from the 142 Infantry kicking the gates and the doors and stuff like that. Cause they would leave like size like 19 boot prints on these doors. And it was amazing. I love those guys. And then so couple with maybe 2 weeks later, so I'm still like limping around. And then 2 weeks later, I had just talked to a guy maybe a week before who had told me, hey, on this road, in the next like week or so, there's gonna be a string of roadside bombs, string of IEDs. All right, cool. Report that up. Here's the approximate locations. The route clearing guys found 2 of them. And so we found the 3rd the hard way, because, or as I like to say, we actually found it the easy way because like nobody had to dig it up. It's like when I was talking to one of the British disposal guys who he had lost both of his legs, and he was a part of the bomb disposal unit, and I was like, how good at your job were you? And he was like, actually, I mean, we found it. So,
and by the way, it's like that. I have to point out, between you being like very joking about losing your leg, and it's so military humor. It really is, which I've realized from being around people like you, Chris, and people like Mike Schlitz. Like, you are not at all embarrassed about this injury. Like, you're proud of what you did. You know?
No, I will. I get like small children who like are staring at my leg, and I will take it off and I will take off my foot and hand it to them.
That'd be good for Halloween.
Oh, Halloween is baller. I actually just went to Pirate Day at the Ren Fair, but I
saw the pictures on Instagram at Lanner Pants on Instagram.
Do you have a wooden prosthetic like a pirate leg?
I don't.
You should get it. If you don't, you need to get one. I'm gonna print one.
I was actually going to use my rock climbing foot is actually about 1/3 of the size of a regular foot, so I can just make a casing that goes around that, and it's a peg.
Cool.
Nice.
And I mean, I nicknamed my friggin' leg Peggy. It's a thing. Yeah.
So yeah, getting back to of course.
So the bomb goes off. We find it. And it was like a little bit later when I was like, wait a minute, like what was the grid for that? Like, hold on a second. Reference back in my notes. Oh, I told you.
You weren't on the route clearing team. The route clearing team had already cleared.
Route clearing had found 2 out of the 3.
So for some reason, why did your command sit besides?
They just said.
Don't give me. I know the comment. I get it, but what was the mission that you had to accomplish to go back out on that road on that specific day, knowing that you had intel that had already been actioned? That, hey man, there is. She was spot on. We found 2 IEDs. And it wasn't a science back then. It's still not a science finding them all. Why on earth did they send you back out on that fucking road. That's ridiculous. Again, we're past ridiculousness. We're into ridiculousness.
Well,
that's just dumb.
We could get into some of the failures of how intel gets passed around.
Was there another person you had to go talk to, or was there some like we got to go talk to this guy on this fucking day? Who gives a shit if there's supposed to be IDs and they already found two? Let's go to put them out on the. I mean, was it that important? They couldn't have waited.
The logic must have been something along the lines of maybe they just never got around to placing the third one, like something like that. Because because Balad was a huge base. So
Anaconda was monstrous. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The engineers who were on the route clearing may not have told the infantry guys who were running the convoy to go out and do checkpoints, and then they were taking me to go and talk to my dude, and while they were on the checkpoint, they would just like a small team would come and pull guard or whatever.
Sense. Okay.
So either word didn't get around or something. We get hit by this IED. Luckily, it had been so hastily dropped that no one at the time got seriously hurt enough to medevac anyone. Like my gunner had some shrapnel in his hand, but it had the timing was off. So whoever was the trigger man had not taken physics, and and it was aimed like into the sky, so it was mostly just shrapnel and stuff like that. But the blast wave is what got me, because it was a large IED. It was just lucky and unlucky at the same time, because it was super lucky that we didn't get actually hit by the main projectile, but it was super unlucky that I happened to be sitting at the exact spot that had a gap in the add-on armor and leaning forward just enough to get the full blast wave, and looking the right direction, that I get it right in the face and then blown backwards and my head slams into something else. And even wearing a helmet is still kind of sucks, because then you just
your brain rattles. No, it rattles your freaking brain.
Yeah.
I know.
So, and nobody was looking at blast injuries at this point.
No, you're right.
So, unless you actually had something sticking out of your head, they were like, okay, you're probably cool. Or they could confirm that, because I was being good and wearing my dark sunglasses. I was wearing my eye protection.
Yep.
But and I was wearing some of those defective earplugs, maybe. Didn't really make a difference, but
3M's awesome. 3M, you guys rock.
Yeah. Thanks. I will appreciate the settlement. But I had fluid coming out of my ears and stuff. Wow. But
at that time, after the blast, immediately,
they were just like, maybe it's maybe you blew an eardrum.
Maybe you went swimming.
Yeah, just got some water in the ear and just knock it out. And it's so nobody's looking for this, and of course I was petrified, because all of a sudden I don't know anybody's name.
Oh wow! I'm
reading the names of Samoans off of their friggin' my truck command, the guy in the passenger seat, his last name was Tukuboyatu, and I'm trying to read it so that he doesn't know that I can't tell who anybody is. And that worked out well.
Jeez.
So I didn't want to get pulled off the road. I was like, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. I am terrified that I'm going crazy. So I'm just gonna fake it. Reading these names, I have no balance. I'm falling over, which is great for my busted ankle.
Yeah. Oh my! All of this compounded. Wow.
It was amazing. So we had to go down this little tiny hill to go and talk to see if somebody in like one of the little remote houses had seen the trigger man or whatever. Because of course I'm sleeping on my rooftop, but which is what everybody was. Always, but it was always 3 guys, dish dashes, average height, red Toyota. But the AK-47s, I don't know. The
they're just sleeping. No, they're sleeping. They're guarding the crop.
Right. They're sleeping on their roof because it's too hot inside.
So let's go sleep in 120 degrees. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Let's go sleep on a tar roof
on the top of hard rock and cooker.
It made total sense. So we went to go wake him up from his nap, and so we had to go down this little hill, and I fall right the hell down this hill on that on my busted ass ankle. So, you know, me and like my extra 70 pounds and like, you know, 2 weapons and all of this go tumbling down this little hill. And my partner really noticed though that something was wrong when we decided to continue the mission, because no one had been, as we thought, seriously hurt. So when the quick reaction force comes and cordons off the area until like EOD can come and do all of those things, they were like, you guys can go and continue doing your checkpoint and meetings and whatever else. We pull up to the next stopping point, and I was like, oh, are we doing a checkpoint here? And my partner, who had been in the truck behind me at the time, comes up and was like, oh no, this is your dude. Like, you've been talking to him for like 3 months. And I never wrote a damn thing down because I had like a photographic memory, and I was like, oh, what am I going to talk to him about today? That's cool. And he was like, cool, something's wrong. I guess I'll do this one. I didn't know our interpreter's name, and of course we weren't wearing name tags. So, because, you know, we don't want the people that we do arrest knowing who we are. So, so we're talking. So he leads that mission. Like, the rest of the day is a total wash. I have no idea what happened. Went back. I think I yelled at my team sergeant my team leader, because my team leader was like, you need to write up the incident report for the IED. And I was like, the chow hall closes in like an hour or something, and I'm starving. Yeah. And she was like, no, you need to write this up like right now. An IED went off. Like, you were hit by an IED. You need to write this up. And I was like, and I yelled at her, and I was like, no, I'm hungry. And at that point, my partner was like, she's been acting real weird all day.
Weirder than normal.
Yeah, like super weird. Like, you might want to cut her a break on that one. Like, she's been acting real weird all day. So they kind of assumed I was going bananas, and but I still went out. Apparently, I only found this out like years later. I apparently still went on missions like the next day and the day after, because they couldn't get me in to see a doctor for like 2 more days or something. And it was mental health. And you send an interrogator to mental health. Like, we know what to say. Like, what am I going to do? Oh, yeah, no, I have no idea who anybody is. I'm starting to lose my vision. I don't know what's going on. No, I'm going to be like, nah, I'm cool. Everything's fine. My unit's driving me bananas, but other than that, like, that's fine. They almost made me a night radio operator. That's the only thing that's stressing me out. So, but yeah, no, I have no idea what really happened in like my life. I mean, kind of since then, but I only have like little flashes.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, the audience just hearing this interview, and then even, you know, if they go back and listen to your interview on the Team House, like, you're an articulate, intelligent person, but people don't know until, like, they read the New York Times piece or you talk about it. This has affected you to this very day. Your memory, everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you still having issues?
Oh, yeah.
How
it had
long?
been a brain... I had actually had a hemorrhage. I had a brain hemorrhage, so... they ran and they finally figured out that it was a problem because at this point I'd moved to Germany, and one of the one of the neurologists at Launchstuhl in Germany had just said, like, hey, these like blast wave injuries are also a problem. And these are the symptoms to look for. And I happened to go in, and I was a year and a half or 2 years late for a post-deployment health reassessment, which they're supposed to do every year. And I would avoid, because every time I went and was like, hey, these are the things that are wrong, they would send me to psych. And if I got a psych diagnosis, I could lose my clearance at the time. So faked that one too. And then but I go in and I tell this physician, the physician's assistant, like, hey, I symptoms like all the way through. And he sent me to this neurologist. He was like, you have everything on the list that she just put out. And like losing my vision, like no memory, I was losing the ability to speak. And so I go and I see the neurologist, and she was like, okay, you need an MRI. And then it came back and she was like, oh, okay, we're going to send you to Walter Reed. You need to get that vacuumed out of the middle of your dome there.
Wow.
So at that point, and before then, because I jump around all the time because, I have a brain injury, whatever, man. So they had done this whole, they had looked at the ankle, because I was like, yo, this thing still hurts, like months later. Is it still a sprain? They finally did. So they did an MRI on that, and they were like, oh yeah, no, you tore some stuff. Like you tore some ligaments. There's a tendon tear in there. You've got scar tissue.
If they would have seen this earlier, would it have had to have been amputated all these years later?
No, probably not.
Wow. That's that's got to piss you off to just...
what are you going to do? Like, I like, that's kind of my mentality. That like, I got enough crap to piss me off now that I don't need to be pissed off about something from 15 years ago. I feel like it probably pisses off my mom more than it pisses me off. Cause they found it, and they were basically like, look, we could do some surgery. Like I had chipped a piece out of the bone. They were like, I don't know where that went. Like the whole thing, they were like, what are you gonna, I guess we could do some repair work, but like, it's mostly like, it's just healed wrong. And they didn't know about the brain injury. So they didn't know about all the nerve damage that was also kicking around. So I was having problems knowing where the foot was. I still had no balance. So, and I was going to go mountain climbing several weeks later. And I was like, hey, can I still climb Kilimanjaro? And they were like, yeah, it's just going to hurt at altitude. So, ended up with frostbite because I had no circulation because of the nerve problems.
I can't believe you did it. Wow.
Oh yeah.
So how many years was this after, when all this, they're starting to piece it all together? How many years or months had it been since you left country? Or were you still in? Were you still serving, or were you finally?
Oh
out?
No, I was in for both. So both of those I was in. I got the ankle looked at maybe like a couple weeks after we got back, because I was like, hey, it's still bothering me. They just made me run a PT test on it, and I barely passed it.
Still passed it though.
Oh man, and like the women, like the old PT test, especially, like the women, we get some time to run our 2 miles.
I don't know. I wish I could remember. I pulled it. I don't know.
20 minutes or something. It was not bad. And I just kept waiting for like to hit the next age bracket and get like that extra like 30 seconds. I was like, man, I could almost walk it now. But and so I'm like, no, it still bothers me. So that was like a month or whatever later, and they were like, oh, we need to like do some physical therapy and stuff like that. But because of the balance and all of those things, I'm still like, even in the Army and wearing a brace and wearing boots and everything, I would still like step down wrong and tear something at least once a year. Ow. And then the brain injury was in they figured that out. Well, it had been about 2 years since my post-deployment health reassessment, which they're supposed to do annually on the date you come back. So that was, I got brain surgery about 2.5 years after the blast. But because of the timeline of when I had been reporting symptoms, they were like, oh no, this is what's happening. But they actually didn't make the connection between why I was still having balance problems and all of that and the brain injury.
Did they still think it was your ankle? Is that what they thought it was? Was still okay?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they didn't do. Nobody made that connection until right before I ended up getting surgery. So, which was in 2019. So, you know,
it's a little ways after.
Yeah. You know, and I had just. And again, I just stepped down wrong in 2019, and like I was on a boat and stepped down, ended up tearing 3 ligaments and 2 tendons just from like trying to go throw a banana peel overboard. And the banana peel also just like, because I fell, like it didn't clear the overboard and like got stuck on one of those, just hanging there. Oh, that was so depressing. And I was like, I'm on vacation. And but at this point, like I have been in pain for so goddamn long that like between the migraines and the leg and all of this stuff, that like even when I went to the VA the next day because we happened to be in the last 24 hours of our vacation, we land back in New York. I'm like, I'm going to walk over to the VA, 'cause it's a couple blocks from my apartment. And, I walk in and they look at the size of my friggin' ankle and they were like, how did you get here? And I was like, I walked like 5 blocks. It's like a pain level 3 because everything sucks in like my life and my body. And they were like, yeah, you should not be walking on this. There's like nothing attaching it to your leg at this point.
The way you described it to me, and Chris would appreciate it because Chris is a movie guy. I'll let you tell it.
No,
but
go ahead.
No, you were saying it was like that. I don't even remember the character, but you said it was like the character in Mr. Deeds who was like the leg that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Like you can hit it with a hammer.
Saving people in frostbite because there's all frostbitten. Ice in the legs.
Black toe.
No,
yeah.
Don't give me
Old
a
Blackfoot.
toe.
Yeah. No, my like every time I go into cold weather, like one of my buddies will be like, he'd be like, you need to take a picture of like the black. They actually called me Black Toe. Yeah, like Blackfoot and Black Toe, because at the frostbite had gotten infected. Oh, my life is like a mess. So, but this, so I had like half of my foot was like pins and needles all the time, and half of my foot was totally numb. So, so that's great for balance too. And then, so finally and the VA, of course, because I mean, it's policy and it's a good policy. Like we're not just going to chop it off right away. We're like, you need to do other surgeries. Like it has to be a last resort. But at this point, it's been like 14 years of just constant, like I had like a collection of those like cam boots, the lovely ones, the stabilizing boots that they put when you break something. It was like my winter wear at that point. And so I was like, forget this, I'm out. And I was like, I'm going to just get a second opinion, from this other doctor. And he was like, yeah, if you do surgery because of all the nerve problems that you're having and all of this other stuff, you're probably going to need surgery like every couple of years because something else is going to tear. You're going to do something again. That's not going to get fixed. So the alternative is you can just chop it off. And I was like, tell me more. Because at that point, I was just so frustrated with like that perpetual pain level of, to me, a 3, which apparently is higher to others. that that's just how it ended up. And I was like, tell me more. And then he was like, oh, and I do this thing called osseointegration, so I can insert a rod into your bone, and then we can just like screw on a different attachment at the bottom. And I was like, no, that's cool. Actually, the EOD, the British explosives guy had told me about osseointegration, and so that's where and he was like, no, if you have to get something cut off, I strongly recommend this, because it's, you know, you don't get the phantom pains, you don't get the like sores from having a socket. Yeah. So
were you finding yourself like even just becoming more and more depressed? I mean, from what I'm hearing I'm glad you did it that way, because it sounds like you would have just kept getting mentally and emotionally worse, which you cover that up. And all of us, you know, some more than others have been where they cover it up with, now we're covering up with medication, not the right medication. Sometimes medication you can buy in the street corner, and alcohol. And I mean, were you finding yourself going down that route too? It sounds like you were.
I am not. I am one of the very few people who have actually never done drugs, but I like
at all.
Wow. Not at all, because I wanted to be an astronaut. So I was a giant nerd. Like, come on. But the and I didn't drink a lot, because the way that it affects my like my TBI, I get like and that's why it was actually funny on the Team House thing, because like I can drink like a lot without getting drunk, and then as soon as I do, I just like go to sleep. so it's not that fun.
Gotcha.
But
I'm like that too, but it's because I'm old as shit. That's
but it does mean I can also like drink Jack Murphy under the table, because like he's like getting drunk, and I was like, I don't know, man, I've had like half a bottle of rum and I don't feel anything yet. So sucks to be you, pal. But I was depressed, and I did not have any outlets. I definitely went through a period where I was not actively suicidal, but like if I was crossing the street and the M15 happened to be coming and I didn't see it, like, oh well.
You were passively
just apathetic.
I get you. I lost three buddies that way, and it's all motorcycles going 180 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And well, if I hit something, I hit something, or if somebody pulls out in front, that's people think that's real. That's just you're killing
like
yourself,
an apathy. It's just this like, I don't really care, so like I'll do dumb stuff, or like I'll just take risks that are totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
And and a lot of that was both PTSD and the constant level of pain that I was in. So,
I can't even imagine just being in pain for that many years. No, I'm going to go see after about, you said 14 years. No, 14 hours. I'm sorry. I'm a puss. I'm going to the doctor. 14 hours. Now, fuck
You're
this.
rolling out your PT mat.
Exactly. Rolling out something's wrong with my fucking foot. Fix this now. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of this shit.
Yeah. And the thing with this show, I mean, we really do like to highlight inspirational stories. And I think yours is an unlikely inspirational story, because you amputating the leg was actually a positive change in your life. And now you're able to walk around no issue. I mean, when I first met you, honestly, you were wearing long pants. You had the sandal on. I really didn't notice it. I wouldn't have known that you were an amputee. And actually, at first, because of the size of it, I figured it was just the foot, not, a significant portion of the leg. Yeah. And what we're doing now with prosthetics, as you said, with 3D printing, it's really amazing and miraculous. So, I mean, it's incredible to see you. And same thing with the TBI. Although it affects you, speaking with you, I would have no idea. So I think it's a great inspirational story. That was none other than Sergeant First Class Elana Duffy. This next excerpt is from one of our very early episodes, episode 4. This is Pat Smith, the mother of Sean Smith, who was there during the attack in Benghazi, who we lost on that day. And we get into some happier times though with her son, seeing Sean in Africa and seeing lions and all different types of stuff like that. So check it out, Pat Smith. Do you miss being able to go all over the world with your son?
Yeah, of course I do. But as like I said, I went to South Africa when the first baby was born.
Wow.
Then I went to. Oh, that was wonderful. But it took so long to get there.
Well, did you go to Johannesburg, Durban? Did you go down to Cape Town? I'm sure you went to Cape Town. I've worked in South Africa.
South Africa was that? Johannesburg.
Johannesburg.
Yeah, I think
probably.
that's where. Yeah.
Oh, that's
where it was. And I went on a safari.
Oh.
Sean took me on a safari over there. We were going in the car, and I was within 10 feet of a lion just laying there.
That's awesome.
I've got a picture of me with lions crawling on top, little baby lions crawling on top of me.
You know what, Pat?
I bet nobody else has that.
You got to send that to us. We'll put that up on our Instagram.
You got to send that. And you know one thing too is that honestly, Pat, I know your spunkiness, I know your feistiness, I know you're tough. So if you and a lion got in a fight, I don't know. I might put my money on you. You're pretty tough. I should give that lion a run for its money. So I wouldn't be too worried about that watching lions.
Well, the lion that I saw, he was about 10 feet away from me, and they said, "Don't get out of the car." I said, "You betcha I'm not going to get out of the car. I'm no lion's breakfast."
Oh my God. I'd love to see the little cub pictures. That's still one thing on my bucket list that I have not done yet is go on a safari. I'd love to go, and it's going to happen.
Oh, that was great. That was so great. You saw the animals running around right there.
It would be cool for you to go at this point, Chris, because I know at this point you've pretty much sworn off doing any more contracting or anything like that. So I feel like for you just to go with Tanya, your wife, and your kids would probably be an awesome experience and not have to worry about anything else. Just as a fun vacation.
No, you're right, bro. I'm this everything we do now, like we're doing now, me talking to Pat right now, and Ian running the podcast, and all of us talking together. This is gravy. This is all just okay. This is gravy now. Let's just have some fun in life. And with the South Africa, I always want to know about the safaris because Pat's right. Where'd you have to fly into? Did you have to fly into to London and then fly down to South Africa, or did you have to connect twice? Because I hear the flight is a bear just to try to get there. It's just unbelievable.
It was terrible. I think it was London that we went into. We had to fly to London and go there. But that's forever.
And that is such a long
Switzerland. Don says it was Switzerland.
Oh my, that's even, and that's just, it's hours and hours. So if we go, it's got to be worth it. But
it's worth it.
Well, then I'm sold. Pat, I'm sold. When I go to South Africa,
it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Just don't let the kids out of the car.
Hopefully, I am a very protective father. The kids ain't getting out. I'm not getting out of the car. I see a lion there 10 feet. No, we'll
there was
stay
a
right
bunch
here.
of. There wasn't just one. There was a whole bunch of them. There was about 8 of them laying around, and the lions, which is funny, the big manes on them and everything. They lay on their back to show off their masculinity, you know.
That was none other than Pat Smith. Rest in peace, of course, to Sean Smith. Great hearing more about her son, a guy that we've always recognized here on this show as one of those heroes of Benghazi, but someone we didn't really know much about, and we got to learn more about through his mother, Pat Smith. We have Jade Struck coming on next, competitive shooter, actress, model. But before we get to her, I have to say she was on her episode, if you listen back to it, very impressed that we had a night vision sponsor, and it gave us a little bit of credit in her eyes, I think. So, we're very proud to be sponsored by Photonis Defense, the global leader in night vision solutions, providing more high-quality night vision capabilities than anyone. Hunters, shooters, boaters, and outdoor enthusiasts rely on Photonis Defense systems to make their adventures safer and more successful. Military, law enforcement, and public safety end users utilize Photonis Defense solutions to give them the edge at night in tactical situations and rescue operations. Photonis Defense is now offering state-of-the-art night vision systems, from the PD Pro B 16mm binocular and the PD Pro M 16mm monocular to the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system, customers from all over are excited about these new, smaller, lighter NVGs. You have got to see these things to really experience how much smaller and lighter they are than anything else you have previously used. If you happen to be going to SHOT Show, then you are in luck if you want to see this up close and personal, because they're going to be at booth 41326. Write it down, take note of it if you're going, booth 41326, where they'll also be doing a giveaway for the PD Pro 16B binocular NVG. So cool. And I think Chris is still on the fence of if he's definitely going to SHOT Show. Hopefully he is. I can tell you this, I will be at the booth hanging out with the guys from Photonis. So if you stop by there and you want to check it out, I'll have some Battleline stickers, and I'll be hanging out with Phil Otto and the team at Photonis Defense. So we hope to see you there. But visit photonisdefense.com for more information, or look for Photonis Defense product options from your night vision dealer. Once again, guys, photonisdefense.com. Check it out now. photonisdefense.com. Link is right there in the description. And of course, we've got to show some love to the greatest ammo manufacturer on the planet. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states. Just click on the dealer locator on the website, and you'll find one right by you, a dealer right by you. If you check your zip code into there, or your city, state, it'll be right there. FortScottMunitions.com. Use the exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. They've also got great merch available, so check them out. You're going to love them. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. Once again, FortScottMunitions.com, and use the promo code Battleline. And they have plenty of after Christmas sales going on, so just sign up for their mailing list, and you're going to see a lot of good stuff that you're going to want to pick up. Trust me, if you're a shooter, if you're a hunter, you cannot go wrong with Fort Scott Munitions. And with all that talk about shooting, let's get into someone who knows quite a lot about shooting and is a competitive shooter, Jade Struck. This is an excerpt from episode 95.
Being a woman, wanting to go into the service, deciding against it, but going into law enforcement, I have a lot of issues. I feel personal sadness for people, especially in law enforcement, that don't value their physical fitness, because it is going to change the tides for whatever it is. Same with competition shooting. It's like everybody in competition shooting, now we've got the tactical games, which I love. I love that there's this new niche. But before, when I was like 18, 19, really extremely into competition, everybody was out of shape and fat and completely not putting any time into their physical fitness. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, if you guys just ran a little bit, it would significantly better your chances of winning. And yet nobody's putting that time. I mean, you don't even have to lift your finger, lift up a pistol. You don't even have to, this is something that you can work on completely off of the range, and yet nobody's doing it. Why? And then when I look at, the physical test in the services for women, why are we changing them? Because I compete against men in shooting competitions. Of course, there's women's division, but that's not really what I'm too interested in. It's always nice to beat women, but when you're in competition against them. But I was always wondering, where do I line up against the men? How many men did I beat? Because just because I'm not as physically dominant doesn't mean that I can't still whoop ass, right?
Sure, yeah.
And it's taken years for me to get my pull-ups. down. Like it took me 3.5 years just to frickin' actually go from a hang to a pull, right? And then it took me an extra 2 to actually get to 10, but it took time and dedication.
But you did it. But you did it. You got it.
And so I think that that's what's required of us in whatever it is that we're going after in life is like, well, are you rising to that occasion? Are you putting in that time? I don't think that there should be any free lunches, and there's not. Really, in the competition of life, there are none. You know, you can't just be giving out passes because people want them. That doesn't build hardship and endurance worth. And so I don't think that that should be a thing that's going on. You know, I think that if you want to go and run and gun and be amongst the best of the best, then you should absolutely be the best of the best
to that standard. Equality is not just equality when we want it to be. If you're going to preach equality, it's got to be across the board. And that's what when people would ask me when women started to go to Ranger School, and then I think women start to go to Buds now, and people ask me, do you care? Does that bother you? I said, as long as the standards are held the same, then no, I don't care. If they can make the standards, I don't give two shits.
Right.
It's that the problem is that the standards start to get lowered. And then they start to get lowered for everybody. Then it's just like, and then now that's what bothers me. And that's where I like what you're saying. Equality, regardless. I may have to work a little bit harder. Well, so did I. I'm 5'9", 160 pounds. I'm not a big guy. I have to work a little harder to sometimes get a little stronger to carry. You're
not Rudy Reyes.
I'm not Rudy Reyes. I got to work. Rudy works his ass off too. But you do have to put a little bit more effort into it. I do have to run 7-8 miles and then go work out after it. But that's what I have to do, and I've accepted that. And to be honest, and I now it's lifestyle now. I love it. Yeah. If I miss it. If I miss a day like yesterday, I have to go work out twice a day because I was driving in a car all day yesterday. But the bottom line is that we all want this equality, but we don't want to have to work to get to that equality. So if we can't work at it and it's going to be too hard, well, then we're just going to lower the standards. Well, then it's not equality anymore.
Well, and then what's that going to say about your personal integrity of your sense of self, right?
Yeah.
Like what that comes down to me is like identity, right? So I identify with having to have worked my fucking ass off to be able to do pull-ups. Like
feels good.
That's who I am.
Accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah. And still it's not enough. But because of that, will never be enough, I never grew up with my dad. I was raised by a man's man who really was like raising 3 girls like they're boys. I mean, shit, like, just beating each other up in school and, getting suspended at the same time. We're like, yeah, let's go. But, like that, his way of thinking, which was, if you want, and my mom too, my mom is a firefighter.
I said your mom's pretty much a badass too.
She is a badass and she's got her things, but she's so rad. And she wanted to go into the Marine Corps. And my grandpa was like, no. And so she's like, hey, well then fuck this. I'm going to go be a firefighter. She didn't tell anybody except for my dad, who they had met and they were seeing each other, whatever. And so my older sister, did something similar where she up and joined the Marine Corps and didn't tell anybody until a week before she had to go to boot. And, they developed this identity in their children that if you want something, you can go do it, but you have to work your ass off. And if somebody tells you no, you don't have to listen to them, but you do have to pay the price for that,
Some great advice and words of wisdom there from Jade Struck. Enjoyed having her on back on episode 95 if you want to check that out in its entirety. Great episode. This next one is Gold Star mother Cheryl Doltz. You probably heard about her son Ryan Doltz from the Newsmax special. Really it was originally just, it was recorded independently and then Newsmax picked it up, but hosted by Chris Peranto, and you may have seen it on there. So this is the backstory of her son, Ryan Doltz, and from basically birth up until joining the military and all that good stuff. This is from episode 102, Cheryl Doltz.
He was persistent from the day he was born because he was born 2 months early. And in 1978, a preemie, it was very questionable whether or not they would survive. And they were just starting a neonatal unit at St. Barnabas Hospital where he was born. I asked the doctors what chance he would have of surviving when I was in labor, and they told me maybe 30% at most.
Wow.
Because he'd probably weigh between 1.5 to 3 pounds. He weighed 5.25 pounds. And they told me he would be in the NICU at least 2 months. He was there 11 days and they sent him home. Wow. That he was determined even then. He was a handful is the best way to put it. When he was little, had a problem with his one foot turning in. So he used to put a bar, special shoes with a bar, and it turned his foot out so that he had to keep it on 23 hours a day. He learned to walk. He learned to go up and down stairs with this bar. He could swing it out of the crib. He got enough momentum that if he swung it up, he went right over and out. He was all over the place. But a year later, it was corrected. He didn't have that problem again. He played football and baseball in high school. Well, actually, he started football when he was in about 3rd grade, I think. He had tried soccer. That wasn't his thing. But football, he loved football. And played baseball for a while in high school. He was 6'6", so he could have played basketball, but he wasn't interested. He wanted something where he actually got to hit people. That was fun. As a kid, he and his brother played war with all the kids in the neighborhood, and all he ever wanted to be was a soldier. When he was a junior in high school, he had the opportunity to go to football camp at Auburn University. And I can't remember the name of the coach right offhand, but Terry Bowden. That's who it was.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
We have a picture of Ryan standing next to him, and Ryan's about 2 feet taller than he is. They teased him at the camp, and my daughter was the one who took him down because I wasn't able to get off from school. She called me, she goes, "He's the smallest person here." And he was 6'6" and weighed about 250. She said, "There are kids coming in who are freshmen in high school who weigh 350 pounds.
Jeez.
And, and the coaches even said to him, "Are you sure you shouldn't be at kickers camp? You're awfully small," because he played defense. He was a nose guard. Wow. And so he decided to try. He went over to practice with the offense and see if that would be better. And there was one coach he was so impressed with. He could spit tobacco out at either side of his mouth. And after they were doing some drills, he made a comment to Ryan. And I'm not going to give you the whole comment because you'd have to delete it. He said, "Son, you're slower than steam off cow." And he remembered that. But,
and by the way, you can say whatever you want here. We don't have to cut anything out.
He said, "You're slower and steam off cow shit."
There you go. This isn't Newsmax. We can say whatever.
Ryan thought that was cool. And he knew it. He was not a good runner, but he could, if he was given an objective, he could take out whoever that person was. And so he wanted to go to Auburn. He would have to be a walk-on, because they told them, "We don't recruit in the North. You don't play real football."
Yeah,
and we don't.
Yeah, yep.
Nothing like, they have stadiums for the high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Even when I was a kid in the 60s, we had a huge stadium with lights at my high school, but it's different up here. And so he would have to be a walk-on. Well, then he went to a college fair and met a young man from VMI. And he said, "I really want to check it out." And I'm like, "Oh, Ryan, I don't think so. You're not real good at following rules and regulations and that sort of thing. I don't know that VMI would, and you're going to have to take a foreign language." And he was horrible at foreign languages. And so the catalog came and I pitched it. And
that's dirty.
I said, he had to have 2 years of a foreign language. I said, "You will never pass. Never. Because you can't get extra help like you could in high school just to barely get through 1 year of Spanish." So because he's like me, he just doesn't hear the sounds. We went to France and my daughter made fun of the few words I could say. She told me to keep my mouth shut because it was going to get me in trouble. But anyway, back to Ryan. He decided he wanted to go to this dinner they were having for prospective cadets. And the Alumni Association was holding it. So we went, and they seated him with the football coach from VMI, and who was a very nice gentleman. It was very interesting. He explained to him how we have peanut butter on the tables. That is a condiment for you. You're expected to eat at least half a jar a day because you need to bulk up a little bit. So 250 wasn't enough. And they had 2 cadets there. And so he signed up for what they call, it's a weekend when they can come and spend the weekend in the barracks with the cadets. And he went down, and it was in the middle of the winter. It was horrible weather, December. My daughter drove him down because, again, it was a Friday. I could not take off from school. And she said, "Mom, the place looks like a prison." And it does. And in fact, the barracks were used in a film years ago as a prison. It was a Civil War film, and it was the prison. He loved every minute of it. I don't know who they put him with, but the cadets that he was with showed him all how you bend the rules, you don't break them. It's
Sure. Yeah.
much fun it can be.
Yeah.
And he came home, and that was the only place he wanted to go. That was it. That's where he wanted to go. And he was accepted there. He was also accepted at the Citadel. And I was kind of glad he did not go there, because the Citadel, that was the first year they had women there. And there was so much media
Yeah, I remember that.
of that.
I remember that.
Really wasn't a good situation. And they only brought in one woman. Ryan's second class year was when women came to VMI, but they brought in a number of women. Plus, they brought in women officers from other military academies, from Virginia Tech, from Texas A&M, so that the women cadets who were rats did not feel isolated. There were officers they could go to talk to. And he didn't like it. He liked the old war that was all male, but he got used to it. And he was class of 2000, but he didn't graduate till 2002. He started out as a biology major, and after one semester decided to switch to physics, because his mentor, Joe Claypatch, who was the drum major of the band, was a physics major, and he wanted to be just like Joe. So that was 2.5 years of I will take everything twice, because physics was not his thing. And finally, Joe sat him down and said, "Look, do you want to graduate or do you want to study physics?" He said, "Well, I want to graduate." He said, "Well, then switch to either business or history, and then you'll graduate." So he switched to history, and with a minor in business, and that's the minor in business is what helped him graduate. He should have been a business major all along, because all of those macroeconomics and microeconomics, he thought they were easy. Statistics, there's nothing to it. Whether other people are having a horrible time, he thought that was a breeze.
I think that's one of the interesting things about when you graduate high school, is that at high school it's like so regimented, and then in college and in higher education, you kind of thrive in these areas that you didn't learn about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he played football for about a month, and then he got mono, because he had sweat parties, they call them, where they took a certain number of cadets into a room with a light, and that's about it. And they worked them out for 20 minutes. And when they got hot, they gave them a cup of water and passed it around to all of them. And they all came down with mono. And the way it was there, you still had to go to class and you still had to do your work.
Wow.
You went to the post hospital. That's where you slept. But you still had to do your work. There was no taking a month off to get over it. But that meant there was no football.
And there was also no remote learning then. Like, you couldn't hop on this thing like we are now, so.
You didn't even have a computer. And in fact, it was, I don't think they had the internet even when he graduated. They had computers, but I'm not sure they were totally hooked up with the internet. That he got better and then discovered rugby and liked it because it was football without pads. And he was the one that they would lift up in the air by his pants. It's like I watched one game at West Point, and I had never seen a rugby game. I knew nothing about rugby, and I saw them putting tape around his head. And I couldn't figure out why. And one of the mothers said, "That's so nobody pulls his ears off." I was like, "Oh, okay." Because apparently they grab whatever they can get. And he loved it, just absolutely loved it.
When did he get? Because didn't he play the tuba at VMI as well? Didn't he get into that as well?
He was in the high school band. He played tuba, and played in the regimental band at VMI. And his second class year, he spent a lot of time conducting the pep band at basketball games because the drum major would say, "Oh, I've got something I have to do. Ryan, would you take over and conduct the band?" And they get their rings in their second class year. And that he would get their attention by banging his ring on the railing, and it would make a lot of noise. And that's how, and he loved to do that. He was always banging that ring on something. But he just loved VMI, everything about it. At the end of his second class year, though, he had not met the 24-hour rule. You must complete 24 credits within a year because he had to go to basic training for the National Guard. He had joined the National Guard at the end of his third class year, his sophomore year, and he had 1 year till he had to go through basic, and he hadn't done it yet, so he had to do it that summer. Well, that meant that he couldn't come back to VMI at the end of the summer. So for 1 year, he went to Fairleigh Dickinson University here in New Jersey and did so well. He was on the dean's list here, where at VMI he was just barely getting by. But he was on the dean's list, and they wanted him to be in their honors program. And he said, "Thank you, but I want to go back to VMI and get that big diploma," because it's actually a sheepskin. It's huge.
I didn't know that. Wow.
You can get the regular one, or we figured after it took him 6 years to finally get, he was getting the big one. Yeah. That he, I worked with his advisor, because at that point he had switched to history. And I had worked with Colonel Davis to set up the classes that he should take here. And then he went back and did his last year at VMI and actually graduated in 2002. So he was always considered a member of the class of 2000. Because whichever class you matriculate with, that's the class you are always a member of, no matter when you graduate. But he was, he loved VMI. He loved being in the National Guard down there. And as soon as he graduated, he was deployed as part of Operation Noble Eagle in Maryland. We don't realize, but we have chemical weapons here. And we are testing chemical weapons and devising things all the time. And his unit was assigned to guard our chemical weapons, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few places where you are authorized to shoot anyone who comes near the fence. He said, however, in that year, all he saw was a couple of rabbits that came near the fence. But in the middle of the night, you'd be in the guard tower, and a convoy would come up, and they would get out of their cars, and you would be pointing your guns at them, and they would point their guns at you. And then they would bring something in, go back to a building, and be there a little while, and then leave again. He said, I didn't want to know what they had in those trucks. But when he finished, he was going through OCS while he was doing that. And right before the physical test, playing some game or something or other, hurt his leg and wasn't able to run, so he couldn't do the test. Transferred back up here because when the deployment was over, there were no jobs in Virginia. his unit was from Martinsville. There was nothing available. Came back up here and went to work for a company called Moore Trench American. They're the company that built the slurry wall for the World Trade Center. And they hired him first just as a part-time to fill in on something, but then he did such a good job, they made it a permanent job, and he was a cost engineer. It was also his job to go with the engineers, who sometimes are not that big. You know, they're engineers, and he was almost like a bodyguard. Because when they had to go and deal with the unions in New York for different jobs, his job was just to stand there and look scary. And he could do that quite well. My students used to refer to Ryan and Greg as the funny one and the scary one. Because when Greg came in, Greg would be joking and fooling around, and Ryan would come in very seriously, asking usually for money or something. And they both had chaperoned class trips. And all the girls wanted to be on Greg's group. And Ryan would ask for the worst behaved. And he would have them marching in a row. We'd be in New York City, and they would be in a line, one right behind the other, because they were all a little afraid of him. And when he said, line up, one behind the other, they did it.
Greg mentioned something to me, and I think you did as well. Maybe Ann did as well. But you said Greg had all the girls around him, but Ryan was the actual movie star, literally. And if people want to see, I think they could even YouTube that commercial if they want to. Tell us a little bit about, because I thought that story was honestly was pretty not hilarious in a bad way. It was fun because of the competition. Yep.
Well, one of those days, he went to summer school every summer, and Norelco came to VMI. They had come out with a new razor that had a gel in the razor that you put, like a pack that you put in. And so you didn't need shaving cream. It was all in one. It was perfect for someone in the military who had to shave quite often, anyone like that. And they came on campus and said, we're going to give you this razor to try for a few weeks, and we'll pay you $75. Well, Ryan's like, I'm in. And at the end of the few weeks, they did focus groups, and they videoed them. And Ryan called me and he said, I'm going to get to be in the commercial, and they're going to pay me $200. Now, this is great. And it's during summer school and so forth. A couple of days later, he calls me again. He said, you're never going to believe this. He said, but I'm going to be one of the 4 featured cadets in the commercial, and they're paying me $2,000.
Big money. College money. That's college money right there.
And they were and the barracks had no air conditioning. It's August. They were going to put the 4 cadets in a hotel. They each had their own hotel room. And he was so excited. The first day, there was a knock on the door in the morning, and the person who was coming to pick him up to take him to the post said, I didn't know what you'd want for breakfast, so I went to McDonald's and I got one of everything. So of course, he ate it all. He wasn't going to let anything go to waste. And he thought this was spectacular. Because he had a speaking part, Norelco paid for him to be in the Screen Actors Guild.
So he's just, I remember that. Screen Actors Guild.
He had a pension. He had all, he was never in anything after that. But, and he just loved every minute of it. And he's in the final scene. He's babyface. He's going over an obstacle course, and the officer pinches his cheek and says, move it, babyface. So Ryan became known as Babyface, and his unit was in Martinsville, Virginia. There's a NASCAR track there, and they always seemed to have their drills when there was a race going on. And so they would try to get to the race. There was also a Hooters, and all of the waitresses in Hooters knew his name. And when he would walk in, it was, hey, Babyface. Plus, there are several they were women's colleges. Now, some of them have become co-ed, but Mary Baldwin and Hollins, he knew girls from all of those schools. And he left his phone with us. So after we were notified that he had died, we were trying to contact people. And there was just girl's name after girl's name in his phone. And luckily, they had their own little network, because as soon as one found out, they contacted everybody else. So we didn't have to do that. But we laughed. We said, well, at the funeral, do we have to set aside one row for Hollins, one row for Mary Baldwin, and one row for Hooters?
Yeah, listening back to that, Ryan Doltz is truly a hero that needs to be celebrated. His story needs to be heard. So if you get a chance, definitely watch that special that Chris hosted. Loved learning about Ryan Doltz. And if you want to hear that in its entirety, that was episode 102 with Gold Star mother, Cheryl Doltz. We're going to wrap it up this one with Hollie McKay, great journalist and war reporter. Her book is Only Cry for the Living, Memos from Inside the ISIS Battlefields. The foreword for that book was written by a guy that many of you are familiar with, none other than Jocko Willink. And she gets into her experiences of being embedded not only with ally groups, but some enemy groups as well.
You were embedded with some of the Peshmerga, even to the depth of being. Yeah, that is not easy to do. From experience, I know that's not easy to do. How did you manage that? And I know it took you over time to do it. Explain that, how difficult that is.
So I spent, a lot of time Peshmerga and also Iraqi army, which was separate. But I think for me, before I'd even gone to cover, I'd made some really good connections through mutual friends of mine that had worked in the tech kind of space in Erbil, and who had connected me with some very well-connected people there. And so I already had the connection a little bit initially before I went. And then, you're back and forth with someone and you kind of get to know them, so that when you see them in person for the first time, and the Kurds are extremely welcoming and hospitable people, so they kind of take you in and under their wing. And so from that, it comes down to just, really vetting your people, networking, and they were always really, wanted their story told. They wanted to, they wanted a journalist and a writer to come in there and see what was happening and see what they were doing. And especially in the early days, so much of what, they were such a ragtag kind of army. They didn't have the equipment. They were fighting. Erbil and Baghdad have notoriously had a lot of conflict. So their side of the story was that Baghdad wasn't giving them their fair share of the weapons and the money that from the budget for that. And by law, they couldn't really get that from other countries because, Iraq as a unified country had to go through Baghdad. So I think Erbil really wanted to show the world what they were doing to fight ISIS, how difficult it was for them. They were bringing their AK-47s from home and were against a terrorist group that had U.S. weapons, that the Iraqi army had abandoned. So I think they were always really determined to tell their story. So I never found getting in to be that bad, but we definitely had some interesting experiences, and they were always extremely respectful, always extremely caring. And for me as a journalist, the one thing that I always tried to also be mindful of is I didn't want them to have to take their sights off their fighting in order to protect me. So that's always a balance, because they are so protective to the point where I'm like, I don't need 5 people right now. I'm okay. But they're really, really, really great fighters.
So I spent such a long time since I've been there, but did you find that what you're talking about, that Iraqis, that Baghdad, at all, you already said it, to what extent were they not providing the Kurds weapons, the stuff they needed? And in my opinion, if we gave the Kurds what they needed, they could probably stabilize the region. Right. We don't, and we don't as well because of I think some of it's Turkey. You can correct me if I'm wrong too, because
No.
but how bad was it? Is it still that bad? Where they're not getting anything that they need from us, and they're just fighting by their wits and by their strong and their courage more so than having their armaments. Is it still that bad? And is there a way we can fix that?
I think over time, I definitely noticed it improved. So from the beginning, and from Baghdad's point of view, it was that, you know, their claim was that they weren't receiving the oil money from that Erbil owed them. So this always tit for tat. So in the beginning, it was terrible, and definitely over time, I did start to notice that I think other countries had started to come in. I think there was an agreement with the U.S. at one point, and the U.S. had definitely amplified its base there. So I think things definitely improved for them, especially toward, you know, as we're going into that Mosul offensive and after that. But in the beginning, it was super terrible. And the issue is that it's very hard for the U.S. or for other countries to kind of say too much, because it is a sovereign country, and the way that Washington often views it is that that's up to them to resolve. You know, it's an internal dispute, and our withstanding policy, as is most of the EU, is that Iraq is a unified country and Kurdistan is semi-autonomous. Obviously, the Kurds would love to have their own country. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I do think, you know, it's a tough spot. But I think definitely there was big red flags in the sense that they needed help that they didn't get. And what happened, I think, in the beginning too, is because the U.S. had pulled out of Iraq at the end of 2011. So there was this little vacuum, and both Erbil and Baghdad had to rely on Iran, because when ISIS kind of came in and they were both scrambling, and Iran is a 3-hour flight away. And they were able to come in and provide a lot of the weapons and fighters and assistance, and that to push ISIS back. And so, you know, even the Kurds were like, well, what are we supposed to do? We had to take Iran's help. The U.S. wasn't here, and it would take the U.S. even to kind of mobilize all its assets. That was going to take some time anyway. And Obama, you know, initially viewed it as the JV team. So I think, you know, that automatically pushed them a lot closer to Iran, which counters the U.S. interest. So it was a messy situation all around.
But people don't realize that. Go ahead, Ian. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one of the interesting things, at least from what I know, which is less than you guys, I mean, I haven't been on the ground there, but about our allies there, is there's this perception that we should be over there, that they need to form some Jeffersonian democracy and they need to be like America is. But from what I know about a lot of the rebel groups there, whether it's and I don't know the philosophy of each of them, but whether it's the PKK, the YPJ, a lot of them are socialist in nature. They don't share our values, but they do share our values in that they want to eliminate terrorism.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the PKK, it's a Marxist ideology. And a lot of people don't realize that. But, you know, with that comes, a different treatment of women and certain different sort of standards. So, there's always going to be a trade-off, and we have to decide, do we prefer that, or do we prefer extreme, Islamic extremists? So there is going to be a trade-off in that.
But the point I'm making sort of is, I think that the objective should be, like, as Chris would say, eliminating the threat more than changing the hearts and minds of these people to think exactly like us, because a lot of them don't want what we have. They want something completely different. They just want to be able to live in somewhat a peaceful situation where they're not threatened by ISIS.
I think we've moved away from that. I'd like to think we've moved away from that model a lot. I think in the beginning, after 9/11, there was this sort of surge of making Afghanistan, and then later Iraq, some kind of liberal democracy. I feel like we've moved away from that. And I definitely know, when Trump came in, his objective, whether people agree or not, was just to eliminate ISIS. It wasn't to, take out Assad. It wasn't to give Kurdistan its own country. It wasn't all these other things. It was a very one straightforward mandate. And I think that made it easier for a lot of the generals and the US side of things on the ground, because the mandate was clear and it wasn't being muddied by those sort of nation hearts and minds kind of objectives. That wasn't on the table then. So that it made the mission very clear.
Well, we've learned that hearts and minds doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. I've seen it. It doesn't work. It's just, hey, let's get in there and do what we need to do and then get the hell out. Somebody hits us, you go and hit the shit out of them, and then you get out and you let the Barzanis and the Talibanis, whether you agree with them or not, you got to let them work it out. You got to let them figure it out. And I lived on Barzani's compound for a year off and on. And you're right. He's a pretty hard, and you know him probably better than I do. He's a pretty hard-nosed guy, but he knows he doesn't want terrorism in his country. And I saw Erbil. I saw Christians and Muslims and Yazidis. I saw everybody living together. Yes, I saw a caste system, just like we have low income and high wealthy people. It's the same. But I really saw it working more or less than the rest of the countries I've been in. So having that hearts and minds mandate that we had when we first started work, it was a complete mistake. And that's good to hear that we maybe are learning from our mistakes, whether it's as quick as we would have liked it to be, but it's good to hear that. And that's good that you saw that there, because I wasn't able to see that. I still saw the hearts and minds crap that we shouldn't have been doing, in my opinion. Hey, well, you being there and we're going to get into your book, but we want to get into, because we started talking about the hearts and minds, the children that you started to see. And I guess I want to know your first experience of whether it was good or horrible, of when you started to see, hey, the children are the one that are caught in the mess of this, and where you started to, where your book went as well. Can you talk about that? And it can be raw as you want it to be, but you can get into it as deep as you want it to be too. And it can be happy or sad. I just want to know, because that's something that as guys like myself, we see, but we don't involve with it. We want to help, but our mission is not to help the children. But man, when you see a young girl or a boy get blown up off a bomb that was probably for you, it hurts. So, can you talk about that a bit, if you could?
Absolutely, yeah. So for me, what I really wanted to do in the book is, and there's definitely a lot of military aspect in the book, but I really wanted to highlight, a lot of stuff away from, as journalists, we call it the bang bang. So I really wanted to, go and really draw out those human experiences and that human impact of what war is. And obviously children play a big part in that. And, there's just so many different components of it, and it's sad. And it's just, there's just so many children with lost childhoods, and it's hard to just kind of, I think there were moments where you become very overwhelmed by it, because everybody has problems, and everybody, and over time, I just sort of started to see that they talked about, it was almost like they complain less, but they complain less in the sense that it was losing hope that anybody was ever going to be there to kind of help them. And that was always really the sad part for me. And the Yazidis, I spent a lot of time with them, and just sort of the atrocities that the Yazidis girls and the boys endured was just shocking to me. So many of the boys were taken and forced to convert to Islam and become these child soldiers, and were held as human shields, and really put through the most horrific kind of indoctrination. And for the fortunate ones that managed to get us to escape, they were going back to camps without any sort of professional help. There was a situation where one of these young boys tried to behead his baby sister at a camp, because that was the indoctrination that he'd been taught, and it was so difficult for his mother to try to do that. And the Yazidis were just heartbroken by this idea that for the first time they would have Yazidi terrorists. And that was just something that was never in their religion. Yeah. This is a religion that predates Christianity and Islam. And, for the first time, that's what they were dealing with is Yazidi terrorists. And then, of course, the girls and the women, and there's thousands of them still missing, were all the ones taken as the sex slaves. And I'm talking girls as young as 8. And, again, what they endured is just, it's so hard to wrap our heads around it, that this was ongoing for so long. and yet we were so incapable of being able to do anything about it. And so that was always really heartbreaking for me. But what was extraordinary is that really for the first time I saw in these communities within the Yazidis is that they were shattering so many of the taboos. So sexual violence being something that was always something you never talked about that happened, something that was, it was too shameful to talk about. And so the women were often the ones that were sort of made to feel ashamed of it. But with the Yazidis, it was quite extraordinary in that they were really speaking out about what happened to them and shattering a lot of those notions. And I just think what they've done for that issue as a whole and going forward, is going to make a really big difference in sharing their stories. So, yeah, it's been a journey, and you see such incredible resilience at the same time as you see sort of just this sense of sadness that you can't do anything about. And there was one particular moment that I just remember feeling so helpless because I was in the city of Sinjar, and it was completely rubbled, and it was basically just a few military people living there. It wasn't safe for anyone to go back. And I found this man who'd gone back to his house, and he had 2 young children. And it was so heartbreaking because he was telling me that he had nowhere to live. He couldn't stay at the camp. And his wife had been taken, and the children's mother had been taken by the Daesh. And he got a call one day that said, if you pay me $10,000, I will give you your wife back. And this poor farmer with nothing, scrounging around for months. And people are so generous too. And that's the other beautiful thing about so many of these communities is they'll do whatever they can. They'll give you the clothes off the back to try to get a lot of these people back. So eventually he manages to raise the money. He calls the captor back, and the captor says, "Oh no, the price is doubled now." And he just, threw up his hands and said, I can't bring my wife, my children's mother back. This is no way I can afford it." And, that sense of just overwhelming helplessness. And I'll never forget that. And I think I also felt especially helpless because I knew that there was nothing I could do personally in terms of giving him money or getting an NGO to give him money either from the US, because that would have been classified as funding terrorism. So it's those sort of moments where you really you can't do anything, except share the story, because we can't do anything to help them legally. So yeah, I think it's just been heartbreak. It's been a heartbreaking process, and those kids are still living in camps for the most part, and it's even worse conditions now because ISIS is not the center of attention, and so the funding for that has completely dried up. And I think we move away from things so quickly, and we sort of forget that they're left to deal with the trauma and the lack of resources and help.
That's what I always say. We go into countries, it's like a party. We go in there, we mess their whole place up, and then we leave and let them clean up the mess. And it's sad that still happens, but you're exactly right. Did you ever feel threatened when you were there? I mean, because you're an American, or even if they didn't think you were American, you're not Kurd, you're not Iraqi. You're trying to get stories out where, and one thing terrorists do know, they know propaganda, they know social media, they know how to paint a picture. They're excellent at painting pictures on social media, and you're painting a different picture than what they're trying to get out there, or so forth. So did you have a price on your head? I never asked you this. I honestly wanted to ask you this a few times, and I just forgot. Was there a price on your head, or was there hey, let's get that little damn American that keeps putting out this stuff to the U.S. people and tell them the truth? Was there any of that? Because you were there during all that time. For
sure. I mean, no price that I'm aware of, but I think there were definitely, and more of my, I guess, more hairy experiences were generally not in Kurdistan, or more in the south of Iraq or Baghdad. I never felt especially threatened personally by ISIS, but I do. Yeah, I think that there was a couple situations with the Iranian militias. I remember that feeling an extreme sort of sense of anxiety I remember going to interview one of these militias at his house in Baghdad, and being with, my fixer, who's sort of what we call sort of interpreter, and they kind of help with logistics, and our driver being kind of at the front, and I'm just going in with her, and she was wonderful, still a close friend now. And so going to this Iranian militia guy's house, and you always have to strike that balance of, I'm there as a journalist. I'm not there to interrogate you. I'm not there to stick it to the man. I'm just simply there to get your story. And so I always make that very clear. But I remember in this sort of situation, this guy starts off with, bragging about the Americans that he'd killed in 2003.
This is Iranian. This is Iranian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's Iraqi, but he he answers to Iran essentially. And then, and so long story short, so he's sort of bragging about this. And I guess for me, I think I was fortunate a little bit in being Australian. I was viewed as a little bit less threatening than perhaps if I had just been American. I think it always seemed to make a difference when, I spoke and people said, "You're Australian." And I said yes. And even though Australians are completely over there and have been over there since the beginning, they didn't always see that. They just see it as America. So that made it a little easier anyway. But yeah, he's sort of bringing in more and more and more of these militia guys, and they're all coming in, and it's just me. And next thing, I'm sitting in this room with probably about 30 or 40 armed Iranian militias, and they've got the hookah, and they're all.
This really sounds like stuff of a movie.
Yeah, and then the next thing the one guy says, "Well, I'm taking you to meet Qasem Soleimani in Iran. We're going on the private plane." And I said, "Oh, thank you for the offer. I think I'll pass." But it was just one of these situations, and then the door was locked, and I just looked at my, I had a sort of a code word with my fixer, and I just said, "We need to call the driver, and we need to leave right now." And she was kind of, smoking the hookah and eating the food and enjoying it. I was like, "No, we need to go now." So that was sort of a red flag for me. But I think a lot of it, and I got out and I was fine. But a lot of it is, I know it sounds funny, but it's so intuition based. There are so many things that I think I really have to tap into this kind of sense of what I know in my gut is going to be a right thing and a wrong thing. And yeah, my intuition has definitely never led me astray, but I've relied on it, probably more than what most sane people would think, is a good thing. But it's hard to explain. And there's something about being in that Mesopotamia, this beginning of civilization, that there's something different about it, where I feel like I can very much connect to where my mind needs to be and what is happening that I don't experience in a lot of other places. And so Iraq's definitely been a place for that. But
it's romantic. It's very romantic. I loved being. I've said it myself. I was my best person in the Middle East amidst all that craziness, and it feels. You don't feel like I feel like Lawrence of Arabia sometimes, but there are times where it's like, wow, this is where everything started. This is so beautiful here, and you just feel alive, and your senses are up. Granted, though, I don't know how you let yourself get locked in there, but that would have been like a red flag to me. Or as soon as I heard the click in the lock, okay, it's time for us to climb out the window. It's time for get out of there.
Well, there you have it. Best of Badass Female Guests, Part 2. Hope that you enjoyed it. Please support our sponsors. They keep us doing what we do every week. Without them, there is no show, and we only work with companies that put out quality products. So check them out. All those links are right there in the description. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We're falling behind in the ratings. We need your help. Leave us a review right there, a 5-star review. It really helps us out. Pick up a shirt. The Battleline podcast shirt is badass. Comes in all different colors. Link is right there in the description. And hey, if you have any questions for the show, as always, hit us up, battlelinepodcast@gmail.com. If they're good, we'll get to them on a future episode. And with that, once again, have a great 2022, everyone. Never, ever give up.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline podcast. But we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.